Hey guys, and welcome to Mango Tea. My name is Steven Mango, and I'm a drama channel that spills the tea on all your favorite influencers and YouTubers. If you'd like to stay up to date on all my videos, please make sure to go down below, hit that red subscribe button, and turn on your bell notifications, and you'll get an alert whenever I release a new video on Mango Tea. For today's video, we are going to be covering all of the Call Her Daddy podcast drama. And if you guys aren't familiar with the Call Her Daddy podcast, first of all, I highly recommend you guys go and subscribe and listen over on iTunes. It is the absolute best podcast. I've been obsessed with it for the longest time. It is hosted by two ladies. One is named Alexandra Cooper. The other is Sofia Franklyn. Two girls who are best friends, who are roommates in New York City, and they sit down together and they talk about sex, relationships. It is absolutely hilarious, but they also give like really good advice on their podcast as well. It is the #1 rated podcast, or it's frequently #1 on iTunes. It's listened to by millions of people, and it also has been raking in millions of dollars. So there's so much drama about this, so I know a lot of you guys may or may not actually know what this podcast is or who Alex and Sofia are. They're also YouTubers. They have a channel with at least 200,000 subscribers, so they also kind of qualify as YouTubers as well. I mean, let's face it, they have more subscribers than I do. And I'm going to be telling you guys all about who they are and taking you in on all of this drama. It was #1 on trending on Twitter yesterday. So a lot of people have been covering and talking about this drama because it is so juicy. And I tell you guys this, that even if you may not know who they are, the drama is worth staying for. And for all of the daddy gang out there, and for all of you who have been following this, I am going to be covering it from start to finish, telling you guys from the very inception of the podcast and taking you all the way through to what has ultimately blown up in their face over millions of dollars. So stay tuned. We have a lot of tea to cover here. Okay guys, so first of all, I just wanted to say I'm sorry I haven't been posting here on Mango Tea in quite a while. I've been focusing a lot of my attention over on my Mangotology channel, so go down below and check out my Mangotology channel. I share stories about my experiences inside Scientology. A lot of them actually do have a lot of juicy tea, so I know you guys love all the drama, and there's a lot happening actually right now over on Mangotology, so check it out and watch videos over there if you have been wondering where I've been posting every few days over on Mangotology. And I want to kind of revamp this channel. I want to come back and cover the beauty drama and spill the tea. Honestly, I haven't really been as interested in covering a lot of the drama, and it's also, there really hasn't been a lot in the beauty world. It's kind of shifted into TikTok and to other platforms, but we will cover that in another video about where I've been and what's going on and everything like that, and like a personal update video maybe if you guys want that. But let's talk about Call Her Daddy today. So the Call Her Daddy podcast originally was started by a girl named Alexandra Cooper. Now, Alex Cooper was initially dating a famous baseball player named Noah Syndergaard, who is a pitcher for the New York Mets. I think it is. I don't really know about baseball or about sports, and I don't know if a lot of you girls even do either, but anyways, that's what she kind of known as being his girlfriend. And I don't like kind of like objectifying people in that way, but given that he's a famous baseball player, she was his girlfriend. And that's where Dave Portnoy, who is the CEO of Barstool Sports, which is a big sports and media company, I guess you can say. They even had a lot of drama actually years ago with Jenna Marbles. Very briefly, as you can see here from a post on Reddit, someone said, "Can someone please explain the whole Jenna Marbles thing with Barstool to me?" And another user said that until recently, she never acknowledged that she got her start at Barstool. She gave Dave, who is the founder, and Barstool zero credit for putting her where she is today. Someone else said she crapped in Dave's mouth on the way out, basically saying Barstool wasn't responsible for her video going viral like a blank, then refused to acknowledge him for a while when she got famous, until a half-hearted video where she gave him some credit, but yet they have a whole entire history of drama between Jenna Marbles and Barstool Sports. There's a whole entire blow-up situation with Jenna Marbles. She was originally part of the Barstool Sports network. When she got famous, she left Barstool. That's, again, old tea, stale tea, and that's, again, in the past. But it's just worth mentioning that Marbles was again, part of Barstool. She blew up and now she's the famous YouTuber that she is today. So the Barstool CEO was following Alex Cooper. Now, again, he was following her on social media because of her famous boyfriend. And she posted originally this 2-minute trailer to this podcast idea that she had called Call Her Daddy. Now, Call Her Daddy was, or is, a sex and relationship podcast, and you guys kind of have to listen. They're very raunchy, but they're just kind of like no F's given. They talk about how to play men and how to sugar daddy, maybe in one video, or talking about OnlyFans, or just talking about sex and dating and kind of finessing men in New York City, where they live. And they posted this 2-minute trailer on social media, and that's what caught the attention of the CEO of Barstool Sports. He wrote to Alex like, hey, like, tell me more about this podcast. I'm really interested, and maybe we can have it presented by Barstool. Now, this was before, again, their like rise to fame, their social media platforms, you know, later, of course, blew up. They have at least 1 million followers each on Instagram. And again, this podcast is a massive brand for Alex and Sofia and for Barstool Sports. And then it all went tanking down over the last week while we were in quarantine. But just to go along with the story here to tell you guys, they ended up reaching a deal, but Alex, the founder of the podcast, said, hey, like, my friend Sofia has to be involved and she has to sign the deal with Barstool Sports as well, and I'm bringing her in on the podcast. Now, Alex was always going to be the mastermind of the podcast. She was always going to be doing the editing and the posting and more like the conceptualizing. And Sofia, of course, is like her sidekick, best friend. But she's also, like, don't get me wrong here, I am Daddy Gang. I love the podcast, and I think that they too make the dynamic what it is and what the show is. So when I say this, it doesn't necessarily mean that I think any less of Sofia. I think, and a lot of people do, that she's kind of like the brains and the reason to Alex, if that makes any sense. And I think she's a very huge part of the success as well to the Call Her Daddy podcast. So when I say this, it doesn't necessarily mean that I think any less of Sofia. I'm just saying that Alex was the original person to kind of get Call Her Daddy to kind of where it is today. They both signed this deal with Barstool Sports about, I would say, about 2 years ago or so now, maybe a year and a half ago. The original deal was for $75,000 for each of them, so $150,000. And for every 10% of listeners they get above and beyond their average listen to time, they would get $2,500, I believe, each, but I could be wrong on that. But from my understanding, it would be $2,500 an episode for each of them. So again, for 1 hour of work, guys, per week, I mean, I know it takes work to edit and post and all of that, but again, for maybe 1 to 5 hours per week on a podcast, to be making about $75,000 up to $100,000. They later comes out to find out they were making a lot more money while crying poor in New York City, but again, for a little bit later in the story. But for two people who are 26 and 28 years old, that's a lot of money. I mean, I'm 28 years old, and if someone was paying me $100,000, I mean, I feel like I would be, you know, quite riding high in life if I was making that much money, or doing, you know, a couple hours of work a week, talking on a podcast, talking about dating and relationships. Like, who wouldn't say that that isn't a dream job? But of course, they didn't realize what this podcast would later amount to and would become. Now, very early on, which is interesting in terms of YouTube drama, which I should have covered this when it happened because I was following it while it was going down. But again, I don't know if you guys actually care about these type of things sometimes, because it's supposed to be a channel about beauty drama. But they had this whole entire drama situation with Tana Mongeau. Here is the video from the Call Her Daddy YouTube channel called Tana Mongeau Blanked Us Over, posted 1 year ago with 508,000 views. So again, this was very early in their podcast. I think they might have had 100,000 subscribers, maybe not at this point. Might have had maybe even like 50,000 subscribers. No, it might have even been a little bit less than that. But again, it was still like very early in the podcast. Only a couple episodes were up. But given how they're very just unfiltered and raunchy and they kind of say what they want, I think they were kind of in brand with Tana, to where if Tana did go on their podcast, like, it's kind of would benefit Tana even if they were a smaller audience for Tana, given that Tana has millions of fans, and they would obviously get the benefit of having someone like Tana on their show. So what happened was they arranged for Tana to come on the podcast. while Tana was in New York City. So it was said because they were saying like, we brought Tana snacks. And the video's up on their channel. I'll link it down below if you guys have any interest in hearing about all the Tana drama from like a year or two ago. But they bought Tana snacks. And say it was like 2 p.m. Tana was supposed to be there. They waited till 2 p.m. They were vlogging about how excited they are for Tana to arrive. It's like 3 p.m. now, and then it's 4 p.m. And eventually like, hey, like we don't even have an episode for the week. Where's Tana? So they talked to Jordan, her manager, or someone on Tana's like PR team or something like, hey, Tana went on a bender last night. No one could reach Tana. She's not available. And like, so sorry, but you know, maybe we can try to get her to call in or something. But eventually they aired out all of the drama. They showed the video. They made a whole thing about how Tana effed them over was like the title of the video. And they went on to, you know, expose this drama.
Tana was supposed to be here 20 minutes ago. No one can get a hold of her. Even her publicist has no idea where she is.
So I just talked to her assistant. I think that she thinks she went on some sort of bender last night. Also, just so you know, like,
there's a good chance
this is like not a thing.
Which actually kind of like put them under fire for like, hey, you're calling out Tana when you know Tana's always late, which again doesn't excuse Tana, but people are kind of like, what are your intentions about releasing this? Like, you know Tana's irresponsible. Like, it shouldn't be a big surprise to you. Again, if you're going to make a commitment, Tana, show up. But we all know Tana can't even show up for like Paris Hilton or Jeffree Star. So like, why is she going to be showing up for like 2 podcast girls who don't have that big of a following at the time? But that's how I found out about the Call Her Daddy podcast, because I'm like, what is this podcast? And why would Tana have agreed to go on their show? So I actually started listening to some episodes, and maybe I started coming across some like different things on social media, and I like shows like that. Like, I just have like that type of, you know, personality kind of similar to them, and I'm like, hey, like I could almost see myself being their friends. And I think that's what the allure of the podcast is, because it's almost like 2 girlfriends like you would want to have, and it's not like they're stuck up or pretentious. They were just like, hey, like this is the way that, you know, I date men and how I whatever, you know, like they have all different sorts of episodes about different things. This is how I give a BJ, and just like kind of like crazy fun stuff. And it obviously went to go on to do like huge numbers, millions of downloads, and it blew up really fast because, you know, people would tell their friend and vice versa, and it ended up being this like huge monumental thing. And Alex and Sofia didn't necessarily know that their podcast would go on to be this like major worldwide hit. So what's been happening, as you guys can imagine, they have merchandise that sells millions of dollars of clothes. They have the podcast. They have their YouTube channel where they vlog. And they have, obviously, ads where they're sponsored. First, they were sponsored by Roman. And Roman's like a company that has like telemedicine, and they do like kind of like sexual health sort of stuff. They're currently sponsored by Honey, which you guys know Shane Dawson and other people do a lot of big sponsorships with Honey. They've been sponsored by Adam and Eve, and they obviously rake in a lot of money from their sponsors. Now later, it's been coming out rumors that they're making about $100,000 in ad revenue per episode. So what that's coming out to just on the ad revenue alone is like $4.8 million a year. So understandably, I think, at least, which we'll get to why they're also not smart on what they did too, but again, if you're getting paid $75,000 and you're bringing in $5 to $10 million for someone, you're rightfully going to be upset. I know that in this age of coronavirus and in the age of just people not having jobs, you and me, like watching this or talking about this would be like, yeah, take the money, $100,000 or a couple $100,000. A lot of money. Kind of can't complain about having like a guaranteed paycheck and working for a company and having them buy the ads and all that sort of stuff. Nothing's guaranteed in life. Take the money, right? So you and I can kind of see that, but when you're talking about millions of dollars, could you imagine if, you know, you could make $5 million off of your talent? You're producing the show, you're editing, you're doing all of the work. So rightfully, it's your personality, your episodes. You feel like, hey, I'm doing all the work. Why do I need Barstool Sports to be presenting it when they're not even in line with they talk about, because it's a sports company, and they're not like basically doing all of the creative stuff. So like, why do we need them? They made the podcast channel art, and some would argue that, you know, being a part of Barstool got them a whole audience and a built-in marketing machine. And look what they did to Jenna Marbles and all these other people. Like, they blow them up into fame. Whereas, yes, I could kind of see that for some of the audience that they have, but most of the people listening to the Call Her Daddy podcast are women, gay men, and just other people that found them through their social media or through YouTube or other things. Like, I didn't know what Barstool Sports was, honestly, before the Call Her Daddy podcast. I know a lot of girls who listen as well, who are friends of mine, who say, like, yeah, we didn't listen because of Barstool. We listened because we liked Alex and Sofia. So I think that there's like kind of like those two ends of the argument. We're not even into the drama, guys. This is just kind of like the preface of what was going on. And they didn't really get along at the Barstool offices. If you watch some of their blogs and different stuff, like, they never really showed up to the office. They weren't really doing like other Barstool shows. Like, I guess when you're part of Barstool, you should go on other podcasts and radio shows. Like, you're all kind of promoting each other's shows and doing like kind of collaborations and stuff like that, which is kind of like the benefit of being part of the Barstool network. But again, they really weren't showing up. They have vlogs of them like getting drunk at the office.
Shot glass is even clean. Who cares? You've had work shit in your mouth. We're gonna get so shit-faced that they have to call an ambulance. They come pick us up, take us to the emergency room. And then Dave is like, I think it's best you never come to the office again. Pretty much we want him to think that we are a complete liability in the office.
So they really weren't part of like the culture of Barstool Sports. But on the flip side, I guess Barstool, again, wasn't going to be too upset about that when they were bringing in millions of dollars for Barstool. So again, why would they have a word to say with them when they bring in millions of dollars and they know that after the contract ends, it's a 3-year contract, then they can go off and do their own thing. But this is, again, where you guys have to kind of know this first. Alex actually gave Barstool the intellectual property, so all the rights and the name and everything to the show, to Barstool, when she signed that initial contract. Again, she probably didn't think the podcast was going to blow up to what it is. And even Barstool probably didn't realize what they were getting, but they were saying like, hey, if we're going to help promote you and blow you up, why wouldn't we take the IP? Because then you could just leave and do the show on another network or on your own. Like, we have to at least own the brand. So for the $75,000, whatever, she signed away the rights to the show. So just keep that in mind to why they haven't left already or anything. So the last couple weeks have been quiet. They haven't been posting any episodes. During quarantine, they released maybe 2 or 3 episodes, and they were like a re-release. So they put out an episode that they recorded maybe like 8-9 months ago. And people were wondering like, what's going on? Like, they live together, they're roommates, why can't they just produce a new episode? They're sitting at home. I mean, understandably, it's not like easy to come up with new creative concepts every single week, but again, it's not like they can't record something new when they're not doing anything else during quarantine, assumably, I'm assuming, right? So they were releasing episodes, but then the episode names started getting weird. It was like Prisoners of Azkaban, then another episode was called like Supla, but backwards it was like Help Us. It was just spelt backwards. And they had another episode title like Thank You for the Crap Show. I can't say first words on the channel. I don't want to get the video to be demonetized. And another video was like We Had Fun. So as you guys can see on the Call Her Daddy iTunes, different episodes, like I said, were called Prisoners of Azkaban, Supla, It's Over, We Had Fun, Sorry for the Blank Show, which gave fans hints that they picked up on very quickly that something wasn't quite right between Call Her Daddy and Barstool. So they kept naming the podcast episodes different things to give hints that they were unhappy with Barstool, but they weren't saying what the issue was. And people were talking about it. There's a lot of gossip online and on social media and even on like TikTok, and people kept talking about like, what is going on with the Call Her Daddy podcast? And it was just understandably to most of us who are fans of the podcast that they were in some sort of rift or contract dispute or something was going on with Barstool. So it came out probably, I would say like a week or 2 ago, where they released this on their social media page. From the Call Her Daddy Instagram page, they posted, "We are always 100% transparent with the Daddy Gang, but legally we can't speak out yet. What we will say is, we will never blanking leave you, Daddy Gang. The minute we can speak, we will. Hashtag free the fathers." So it was being implied that they were maybe being held captive in their contract or something was happening where this whole Free the Fathers campaign came out. Because after their last post on Instagram that I showed you with the hashtag Free the Fathers, they started releasing merch that said hashtag Free the Fathers. And it said join the blanking movement. They're the daddies of the show and Free the Fathers and like basically almost comparing it to like Kesha, who was in like a whole sexual harassment type of lawsuit with Dr. Luke or whoever it was, and there was like a whole entire thing about that. But basically they were trying to imply like they were being held captive in their contract with Barstool, because what was going on behind the scenes where they were trying to shop the show around to other networks and other people, all through Sofia's boyfriend. Her boyfriend is an HBO executive named Peter Nelson, And he was kind of like the person to kind of like take Call Her Daddy down in a way, because allegedly there's some sort of rift between HBO and Barstool. There was some sort of like what they called at Barstool like a hit piece or something against them, and I think they were trying to say it was greenlit by HBO or the HBO Sports people. And given that the boyfriend of Sofia is an HBO executive, they, or a lot of fans and other people, are speculating that he was trying to shop the show around to other networks to try to get his girlfriend and get the show out of Barstool, because again, they're bringing in millions of dollars for Barstool. And if he's against Barstool, then again, his girlfriend works for the company, so he was trying to shop the show to someone else to try to like almost be like an FU to Barstool when the show would move over to another network, because they had some type of offer with the Wondery podcast network. And Alex and Sofia together were trying to shop the show around. They were denying it to Dave, the CEO of Barstool, and to other people, like, no, we weren't shopping the show around. Meanwhile, they were, and they're trying to get out of the contract and try to see like what was going on with the intellectual property to where they can maybe get the show and the name Call Her Daddy and move it somewhere else. But what they were trying to do was they were going to rename the show on the Wondery network, name it something like The Fathers, where you would still have the same podcast, the same host, but just a different title to try to get out of how they had the intellectual property at Barstool, knowing that they can't get out of that contract. Barstool's like, hey, we're going to sue the F out of you if you move the show, because you're in contract now for another 18 more months. And they were, again, crying poor for a long time, Alex and Sofia, trying to imply like they weren't making money. But the CEO of Barstool, and what all went down over the last 2 days, was he released this episode on the Call Her Daddy feed. The episode was titled Daddy Speaks, and the description said, El Prez explains the Call Her Daddy fiasco from the Barstool perspective. And I'm going to tell you guys what he said, but basically by him putting out this episode was very... no one was expecting it, let's put it like that, because there was so much behind the scenes, and Alex and Sofia saying, hey, we can't talk about this legally, because there was a lot of like legal drama and different stuff going on with this podcast. But the founder guy, or whoever Dave Portnoy actually is for his position at Barstool, I think that he's just one of the founders, and he's not the CEO. The CEO actually is a woman by the name of Erin, and she released a podcast as well against the Call Her Daddy girls. But it came out in this podcast, first of all, one of the big revelations was they weren't being underpaid. They were getting, I believe, Alex was overpaid compared to Sofia. Alex made $506,000. Sofia made like $480,000 or something ballparked around that. So they really weren't too far off. But what he was talking about in this episode was how first Alex wanted a raise because she was doing more of the work. He said yes. Later on, it was coming out, now that there's like drama between Alex and Sofia, but they were trying to move the podcast because of Sofia's boyfriend. They don't have the legal right to, so Dave's like, we're going to sue you if you try to bring the podcast over on this other network. And because now Sofia doesn't want to start any drama or with her boyfriend or make him look like he was trying to shop a show around being this like executive, and given now that he didn't actually have any right to, Sofia's like kind of sticking up on her boyfriend's side, whereas really a boy is now taking down the Call Her Daddy podcast. Because during coronavirus, Alex and Sofia went to Dave Portnoy to his apartment and said, hey, let's try to negotiate this, after they had like the legal back and forth and all the drama with that. And he's like, look, I'm going to pay you guys $500,000 a piece, $500,000 guarantee. We're going to throw in a different additional bonuses and stuff to them, but I'm going to shorten your contract from 18 months to a year. And at that year point, I'm going to give you guys the intellectual property for free. So you just stay one more year, you guys get $1 million, and you get your show. You can move it to another network if you want. So Alex was kind of like, hey, like this is a pretty good deal. And Sofia wasn't having it. She won't sign the contract. She wouldn't do anything to get that show to go. The reason Dave was offering that was because during this whole entire time, it's coronavirus, they have to make their payroll, their advertisers are like, hey, why aren't there new episodes? So he said that they're losing up to $400,000. And legally, he could probably recover against Alex and Sofia. And Jeff and I actually just filmed a video, which we're going to be uploading tomorrow morning, with all the legal ramifications. So if you guys don't know, my husband Jeff's an attorney, and he's basically going to or he did a whole legal analysis about this whole entire situation, about all the legal rights for Barstool, Alex, Sofia, what claims could be going on, and how they could get their podcast and the IP and all that sort of stuff. So it's a very interesting watch, so stay tuned for that tomorrow. But again, now that there are legal battles because Sofia didn't want to sign this contract and stuff, so what happened was they said to Sofia, they said, we'll give you your own show on the network if you want. If you're not going to come back to Call Her Daddy, $500,000 for you. And at the end of the contract, you can keep the show, the IP and all that sort of stuff. She, I guess, didn't say anything. But with Alex, they were saying, let's work out a deal between us, Barstool, and you, Alex. And she's like, yeah, like, I actually think it's a great deal. I think it's sucky that Sofia won't come along for the ride, but if she won't, let's work out a deal. And one of the deals were initially 50-50 down the middle, where Barstool gets 50 and Alex gets 50, or Alex and Sofia rather, of the show. And that's, again, could be millions of dollars. And when Alex wanted to do that, Sofia still wasn't involved. So they worked out this new deal where Alex, again, could host Call Her Daddy or have her own show, and she would get 75. Barstool would get 25 of the show. So Alex feels, from what they say, like, hey, it's my show, basically. You know, Sofia, again, she'd be hard to replace, but she basically could be replaced. And I'll edit the show, do all the work, and I'm going to be making millions of dollars. Why now that Sofia was saying, like, hey, like, I might be interested in swinging back around and doing the deal? They're saying, like, no, F you. Like, I'm not going to bring you back in on the deal. She was originally willing to be in on the deal with Sofia. Sofia went off because of her boyfriend trying to get this deal at some other studio when it wasn't even like he had the legal right to try to sell the show or get another deal. They couldn't do the deal because they already had Barstool. They were under contract and had the intellectual property. So Sofia's, like, wrong in this regard, and I wish that she had better advice, or like someone else, or listen to her friend Alex to be like, hey, come with me, we'll make millions of dollars. We just have to wait it out one more year and we get the show for ourselves. And it was like a very, like, gift that they were getting from Barstool if they did the deal, and Sofia didn't want to take the deal. Now Alex is going to be moving forward with this, and now Sofia's left with no show and no $500,000 check. And I think that they assume that Sofia's going to be filing some type of lawsuit or discrimination type of thing, so I don't necessarily know what's going to be going on with that. And then the CEO of Barstool made a podcast, and she started speaking out on Call Her Daddy. Her podcast is called Token CEO, and the episode is called She Said, She Said. And the description says, on today's episode, Erica talks in depth for the first time on the podcast about her take on the Call Her Daddy situation. So she also, again, has very similar type of points that Dave was making, and it's just very interesting that there's been so much drama over this podcast, a sex podcast, but again, it's worth millions of dollars, and it's a big brand for the Barstool brand. And given that Barstool helped to kind of promote them, get them going, yeah, now that they're making all this money, I could see from their perspective, they're like the talent and the celebrities, they feel like they want more money, but I wish that they just dealt with it different to Barstool and had Barstool present them an offer, because they just protested. We're not going to record an episode, which why they haven't been recording in the last like 2 months. We're not going to release anything until you pay us. It was almost like a blackmailing type of thing in a way. It's like a protest, and I can kind of see that they feel like they have more leveraging power if they kind of back out, because then they'll be like, hey, we'll throw you guys extra money, just start filming, like we want the ad revenue and we want you to be working. But then again, it's their job. Maybe they were hoping that they'd get fired, and if they got fired, they'd get the intellectual property. There's been all these different theories about it. The most interesting theory is that Peter, Sofia's boyfriend, is trying to sabotage the Barstool brand by trying to remove the podcast and work like behind the scenes to move it to another network because they have some sort of vendetta against Barstool at HBO or something like that. So there's that theory. So I'm very curious to learn a little bit more about that and to look into that to see if that has any merit. And I'm really interested, obviously, to see what Alex and Sofia say about this, because you can listen to the one side, which is Barstool's side. We don't know necessarily if there's like some big campaign that was against them, or if like Barstool was treating them poorly, or like some reason why they want to get out of the deal. I think a lot of people are very quick to jump to some type of conclusion without hearing like what the ladies have to say about it. So I'm really curious to their side, but it's not looking good. People are like totally against Sofia, so even if she wants to start another podcast, people are on Alex's side. They're on Barstool's side. And some people may be like, oh, Alex kind of threw Sofia under the bus, but it's like, Sofia didn't want to make the deal for all that money. What is she going to do? Yeah, she's the co-host, but it's kind of Alex's baby, more or less, and Dave found Alex through Instagram, like I said initially, so I think that, if anything, Alex is kind of more in the driver's seat with this, and Sofia should have been more than lucky to, in this economy, in this time, to be like, hey, I can make a podcast from home for $500,000. Like, who else is just throwing $500,000 around? So I'm curious to hear and see what Sofia has to say, and if she's going to make a podcast or what the deal is. I think Alex and Sofia should try to like work out some sort of truce and work together again in some capacity. Maybe it's too far gone after Alex kind of tried to go behind Sofia's back and say, Sofia won't make a deal. How can we go and move forward? But again, it's business, and she doesn't want to lose her show over her friend. I wouldn't let my friend dictate $500,000 or $1 million or millions of dollars. I'd be like, screw my friend. I mean, sorry about it, but it's just the truth. I think any of you guys, if you had millions of dollars at stake, you know, unless you had another backup deal that you were legally able to take, you might be on my side or her side about that sort of thing. So that's what was happening with that. Fans on the internet have been completely coming for Sofia, coming for her boyfriend, and just the whole entire situation just is not making Alex and Sofia look very good right now. So I'm very curious to hear and see what is going on with the situation. There was a whole article as well that came out with the New York Post. The article that sparked up all the drama was from the New York Post, and the article is called "Call Her Daddy Podcast Hosts Have Turned on Each Other," Insider says. Initially, this journalist called Kristen Fleming, her name was, she made this like very misogynistic article. Her article was called "Spoiled Podcast Fembots Attack New York Post for Giving Them Publicity." I even wrote it to her on Twitter about it. My tweet reads, "Your misogynistic article, Flem, on Call Her Daddy Girls was absolutely disgusting and tasteless, especially given how the New York Post did them dirty to begin with. It made me sick reading your trashy story and how you bash two awesome women who have a badass podcast." Very misogynistic, how she was like attacking them, and there was this whole drama situation too where initially the New York Post was like going to feature their podcast, and they got into all this drama with the New York Post too about this because they took these like really scandalous photos in like the men's bathroom and stuff like that, like to try to make them look like sluts, essentially like slut shaming them by trying to make them look like they're in the toilet, like trying to like pick up men or something like that, with how the article was trying to paint them off. So again, I was almost on their side about that. They did a whole podcast talking about like how their makeup artist was drunk and how bad the Post made them look. And then the misogynistic other article came out from this journalist, Kristen Fleming. I don't remember every single thing she was saying, but she was basically throwing them under the bus and saying all this negative stuff about them and insulting their podcasts and their sense of humor and all that sort of stuff. So they got into some drama with the New York Post, but basically they also believe at Barstool that someone was leaking to the New York Post all this drama and tea, which came out like a day or two ago, the New York Post article talking about how Alex and Sofia aren't talking anymore, and there was like an insider that was like leaking stuff to the New York Post. Obviously that's now being alleged to be Sofia's boyfriend. They've been doing that because he's like a media executive, and they were talking about how the podcast show, about the salaries and about things that are going on and about Barstool. And again, I'll link the article down below if you guys want to see what was said in the New York Post article. But there's just been a lot of drama in the last like year or two surrounding this podcast. It is a great listen, but in terms of like the drama, it's really juicy, and I'm going to be spilling more tea about it as it comes out if you guys are interested. And tomorrow's video is going to be Jeff's legal analysis about the situation. So let me know in the comment box what you think about this whole entire drama situation. Do you think that Alex and Sofia were right in how they handled this, to try to like sell the show behind the back, to try to make more money, to try to protest by not recording episodes, to try to get Barstool to pay them more money? Should they have just stuck it out in their contract and waited it out? I mean, I think Alex shouldn't have sold the intellectual property to begin with. I think she should have just went off and did the podcast on her own. But now that they're so popular, it's like, did Barstool help that? Did they not? Because Barstool was like a sport company, and it's like, did they really have any hand in helping out with the girl-female power podcast? So I'm curious to kind of hear what you guys think. Do you guys watch the podcast? Are you a Daddy Gang member? Let me know in the comment box down below. Also, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it on social media. Tomorrow is going to be Jeff's legal analysis, so look out for that. I know you guys have been missing Jeff here on Mango Tea. And let me know what you want to see here on my channel. I am going to be, of course, spilling more tea, but I have some ideas and stuff, but I kind of want to know what you guys want to see here on Mango Tea as well, because I'm going to try to breathe some new life back into this channel. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I love you all, and I will see you in tomorrow's video. Bye, guys.